So I have this old sheet of fir ply that is exterior grade. It's so old that it actually is very good, no voids. It's perfectly fine for something that's going to be completely glassed over. I'm sure most boats actually, their transoms have used this type of ply, so it'll be well sealed with epoxy. However, this is the bad side, the C side. Hence the C, and there are a few missing knots, which isn't always the case, but the easy way to replace these, I'm going to glue them in using expanding glue and some cedar veneer that's about the same thickness, and basically I'm going to do a cutout here of this particular shape, and then I'll mark it onto the piece of that I'll be gluing in there, and then gluing it in, putting a little weight, a couple staples around the edges will work, and that will then seal, and when I sand it tight it will be fine. So, but the key here is expandable glue. This area is a little rough. I'm not going to be sanding that, and I'm not obviously going to be following this exactly, so it will need the glue to squeeze out so that it fills that, and then that will work. And I'll go ahead and do that for the other ones as well. And now the other side I'll point out is a really nice side. Maybe I can show over here. This again is the bad side, and normally I would expect the knots to look like that, but in this case one was not. That's how the other side looks. So how gorgeous is that? That's the good side. So that gives you an idea of the quality of the ply. So you see here what I've done. So I took my outline, I traced it quite hard. I should have put it a little more in the corner to save material. I had resawn a little bit of cedar, which is a softer wood, and by pushing down with a pencil several times, then I use the same technique of highlighting so that you can see where the line is, and then all I do is trace that in, and then I nip that out, and we will have a patch that matches, and I'll show you that in a minute. Okay, just to be clear, Gorilla Glue is not my sponsor, and by the way, had Elmer's had the hardware store I went to had Elmer's, I would have bought that. It's usually cheaper, same stuff, but Gorilla Glue is good. Just for something like this especially. Notice I well coated it, and especially around the edges, because that's where I'm wanting it to foam up. And that's not a perfect patch, but work that in. Try to keep it off your hands. Work that in, and then that gives you an idea how the patching system works. When that's sanded down, once that foam expands, it should be awesome. Now I may put a small weight on it or something. We will see. I think my staple idea is probably the best option. So I'll just throw a couple staples and show you that. And there's huge stapler. And that's my simple, quick way of clamping in position, because I don't want it to curl. Although it's not a water-based glue, so it shouldn't curl on me. And I may rub in some wood dust. I've got lots of it sticking around here, so I'll probably rub in some of that into the gaps. And then that will be done until tomorrow, and I can sand it and ferret, and that patch is done. Several more to go. But it's worth taking a little extra time. This sheet was free to me, so I'm happy to use it. There you go, just a little hint how to handle these fallen out knots. All right, so what I've been doing is, as the Gorilla Glue, polyurethane glue, expands, I've been knocking it down and bringing in some more dust and rubbing it in. And just every time I go by, I do this a little bit, and that just fills the gap and makes it tougher. And same over there. And then I've also been scooping any excess, because like you can just grab some of this and putting it on little pin knots or whatever. Oh, sorry, not watching what I'm doing. Little pin knots and whatever. Here, let's expand out, then I'm more likely to get it. So just filling any little pin knots and just going through and checking everything over. And that way, like, that's a black knot. It's not really sound, but once it's glassed in and I squeezed glue in there, it will be. And I went over and did this one as well, just to cover the knots. It wasn't as bad. It had one bad one on the edge, but I think I'll be cutting that out as the drop door, and the drop door is bigger than the opening, so that won't be used for that. I'll use it as the step. Yeah, so that's basically it. Where I could get a clamp in, I did. The staples worked reasonably well for some, and I pieced some of the holes together with the leftover after I cut. The pieces kind of fit together nice. As long as they're glued, they'll be fine. So yeah, so that's the transom. Not looking as nice on this side, but it will when I'm done with it. And there's not voids along the edge. I don't know if you can see this. The edge is sound, which is awesome on the transom, especially this bottom section. And that's key. So I make sure if I see something, a little gap, I'll try and make a little piece of strip and fill it. Take a scrap or whatever and slice it and fill it in and push it in as far as I can with some glue. Yes, it takes a little bit of time, but on the other hand, when marine ply is, fair bit per sheet, and I have to thank my dad. He had this laying around, and so I got it from him a while back. At any rate, yeah, so it's good to use it up, and it's all painted anyways, and the bow section, which this piece will be well above the water line. And most of the time you have to worry about transoms. Anyways, I'm rattling on, but most of the time you have to take more time on the transom, because let's face it, most boats, it's the transom that rots out. What I try to do is I don't add a lot of wood or cleats. I put a good fillet. I don't even worry about angling this to the angle. I leave it open. In fact, I may round it away so that there's a big fillet of epoxy capping the end grain, and it doesn't even have won't have any way that water should get into this at all. And then nice glass tape and fiberglass and everything, so that I keep the edges clean and sealed with epoxy and filler to make fillets. So yeah, so that's my habit on the transom, especially because that's where the water tends to accumulate. Seal it up good, double glass if needed, whatever it takes. And that's how it looks when it's all said and done. You can see there's still a few little hollows, but as the wood anyways has some grain, and this is the sea side actually, the other side's beautiful. That will be filled with a little bit of thickened epoxy troweled over top of all this. So it'll end up getting to look quite nice, but essentially the knots are now sound, and that will make a perfectly good transom when it's all said and done.